Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vicini. We are presented by The Athletic. Today on the show, it's a good friend of the program, Adam Spinella, one of my favorite human beings that does basketball content on the internet. Adam, what's going on, buddy? How are things?
What it do, baby? So good to be here with you. Nothing going on in the basketball world in July, right? Just free agency and summer league and everything else known to
Peach
mankind.
Jam?
Peach Jam, FIBA out there for the youth tournaments, U17 wrapping up a few days ago. Just a lot of basketball, a lot of fun with it, but a lot to discuss. And I'm very appreciative of you having me back on here to be someone to break down a lot of what's going on.
Well, and we've also got like Gigi Jackson news, who now it looks like is probably a 2023 draft prospect as opposed to 2024. We've got Deandre Ayton going live now. We have Kevin Durant trade rumors. We have Donovan Mitchell. Like, it seems like trade rumors that are like live right now, as opposed to the Durant ones, which seem a bit more dormant based on the way that it started. Oh yeah, by the way, we got hockey. Look at this. Sidney Crosby, really good at hockey. He saved hockey in Pittsburgh again by making sure that the team signed Evgeny Malkin. So let's go. We're rolling, baby.
Yeah.
But let's talk about DeAndre, because the DeAndre Ayton news, we're recording this Thursday night, Adam's time.
Mm-hmm.
It is currently Friday morning. This is going to go live on Saturday morning in the United States. DeAndre Ayton just signed his max offer sheet with the Indiana Pacers. Within 10 minutes, the Phoenix Suns have leaked that they're matching, basically. So all of this is done now. And that's the important part. All of this is done. And all of this is now put to rest for at least 6 months, until January 15th is the date that DeAndre can be traded. I would imagine they're going to try and bring him back into the fold and act like nothing happened here. What is your reaction, first and foremost, to the way that the Phoenix Suns handled this? Because I think that we understand the logic behind why they handled it this way. I just don't know that I agree. So let's just get open thoughts on the table first. What is your reaction to the way the Phoenix Suns have handled the DeAndre Ayton contract negotiations?
It's just been a strange year, Sam, with DeAndre Ayton and the saga going there, because I thought he was fantastic in the NBA Finals last year. And moving into the summer where there's contract negotiations for an extension, I figure, you want to maximize Chris Paul's remaining years, keep Devin Booker happy by keeping the other best young prospect and player that you have on your roster and locking him up long-term. And now is the time to go in and double down on that core. And they just didn't want to pull the trigger. I'm not as intimately involved with, what we hear in the media is legitimate, what isn't. I don't know how much of it is smoke and how much of it is actually fire. But with Phoenix not wanting to go to a max offer sheet, there were a lot of rumblings now about what's Monty's relationship going to be like with DeAndre Ayton? How is he viewed in the organization? Does Sarver have an issue with paying some of these guys big money? I think at the end of the day, like, matching Ayton is 100% the right thing to do. But the public discourse of how we got here is going to be fascinating to see how that bleeds over into the future with Ayton in Phoenix, because it certainly hasn't, publicly at least, been the smoothest road over the last year from, wrapping up the NBA Finals to get to this point. I think it's the right move for Phoenix to make, just questioning kind of how we got here. Could it have been handled a little bit differently so the optics look better for everybody involved?
Yeah, look, so you mentioned the finals last year. He looked really good. I thought he looked great against Nikola Jokic last year in the playoffs as well in that second round series. Look, Jokic dropped 25 points, 13 rebounds, and 6 assists per game in that series. He also did it on 47% shooting, 28% from three, 68% from the foul line. Just drastically lower numbers in terms of efficiency than what we're used to seeing from Nikola Jokic. And in large part, it was because DeAndre did a great job on him defensively in that series. DeAndre had 14 points, 11 rebounds. He shot 61% from the field. Like, not enormous numbers, but I would argue that given the roles, given the responsibilities, DeAndre basically played Jokic to a stalemate in that series. And that's why the Suns were able to sweep Denver. It wasn't just like like they beat them in a tough, hard played 7-game series. It was, oh no, this was just absolute curtains from the jump, it felt like. And it was in large part because of DeAndre Ayton. So I find it weird that it wasn't just one playoff series. He was great in the playoffs this year against the Pelicans before falling off of a cliff for some strange reason against Dallas. And he's got like 3 or 4 really good playoff series now. And I just don't know what the benefit is to handling it this way. I know what James Jones's argument would be, though. From the jump, he told the Athletics' Sam Amick that they're a little bit worried about having multiple designated extensions for rookie scale players on their books. They have Devin Booker already. If they sign DeAndre Ayton to that deal, they then have 2, and they can't bring in another one unless they trade one of those 2 players. The thing is that at the end of the day, you're probably going to have to move one of those 2 guys anyway to bring in another designated rookie extension. And you are allowed to bring one in. You're allowed to have one that you drafted, one that you traded for. You can't have 2 that you traded for in terms of the CBA. So it's a little bit bizarre that they valued that this much. I guess that I'm struggling with why wasn't there a compromise to be made at 4 years, a full 4 years, 140 from the Suns or something like that. A little bit, or no, I guess it couldn't be 4 years, 140, or no, it could be because they would give 8% raises versus 5% raises.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you do, 4 years, 8% raises versus 4 years, 5% raises? I don't know. I think the whole thing was handled very bizarrely. Maybe it is true that the representation just wouldn't sit down unless it was a full 5-year max. But I find that hard to believe logically, just given what we know.
Yeah, and I struggle with the perception that it might be something to do with wanting to overpay a center or lock in somebody like that long term, just based on his positionality. Anchoring yourself to a certain style of play, because Ayton's proven to be very, very successful in the style of play that he brings to the table. And B, if you're worried about not having a late game option that can switch, that can do some different things on the perimeter, be a little bit more fluid athletically when you're matching up with some of those guys, then don't decline Jalen Smith's option after year 2. A lot of the synergy of some of the different moves that they might have don't necessarily add up, where if you're really worried about committing to that type of style, why is Bismack Biyombo the guy you're signing off the street in February when you need another body? I think that it works. They know it works. There was something going on that I don't really know how to put my finger on it, but it's been really strange to watch this unfold.
Well, and I think that what this shows is the Suns have hit a lot of really big decisions, right? They have nailed the Devin Booker selection under Ryan McDonough. They nailed the Chris Paul trade under James Jones, if I remember correctly. I believe that was a James Jones decision.
Yes. Yeah.
Should have been. If I remember correctly, I believe it was James Jones' decision. Nailed the Mikal Bridges pick, which again, I believe was McDonough era. But they also now admittedly don't put a lot of assets into scouting and into pre-draft stuff. They have made some strange decisions on the margins, like not going in at the deadline and trying to acquire a guy that will help you create offense in case of a Chris Paul injury, in case of X, Y, and Z, right? To me, that's what I would have done. I would have tried to go and get an Eric Gordon at the deadline. I would have tried to go and get someone that could have been a real option with size who can bring defensive value off of the bench. I think that this team misses on the margins a bit more regularly than what you would hope for, but it also shows just the margin for error is enormous when you have Chris Paul and Devin Booker and Mikal Bridges and DeAndre Ayton. and the Suns are still a contender. Like they are still a legit title contender because they've matched this deal. I think matching this deal is literally the only thing they can do. And if you look at it in the grand scheme of things, they just got a guy that they weren't comfortable giving 5 years to for a pretty significant discount in terms of money. It's just that you're also taking probably a real discount in terms of player control.
Yeah.
And to me, the discount in player control does not exceed the discount in or the discount in player control does not exceed the discount that you're taking in terms of money moving forward.
Yeah, the price you pay is making Ayton unhappy and not wanting
Yeah,
to
that too.
really buy into the process too. And in Phoenix, like Chris Paul's not going to be around forever, and there's going to be a moment when the torch gets passed a lot more to Booker, and with that, more offensive responsibility on the daily for Ayton. You need a guy who's going to buy in to be part of the organization. This is a 4-year deal, but I believe it's only, what is it, 6 months, or is it 1 year until he can agree on the trade?
He can get traded in 6 months on January 15th. He has veto power for a year on a trade, and they can't trade him to the Pacers for the next year.
Right. So I think there's a part of this process too, where, guys who are signed to max level or close to max level contracts do have a lot of power. And we've seen it time and time again where they can take the money or, re-sign with the team that they're on. And then when they decide it's time to move on, kind of flex their muscle a little bit and try to renegotiate their exit to a team of their control. Free agency is not necessarily always about when your contract expires anymore. It's just when you want out of your current situation. And, I think that that's certainly something that the Suns have to be mindful of now. Like, yes, you've cleared the first hurdle for the first 6 months to a year here that you want to go through. But there's still work to be done to mend some of those fences and make sure that, relationship wise, everything is where it needs to be so that Ayton wants to be in Phoenix long term.
Yeah. And look, here's the thing. So like I've seen some speculation about like how will Monty Williams react to all of this. It seems like Monty, like the last time we saw Deandre Ayton and Monty Williams on the floor together, Monty looked pretty frustrated with Deandre didn't want to go back in, apparently, according to reports, etc. I don't want to even, I don't want to get into what I know and don't know, because I don't know what the actual deal is that happened there. The thing about Monty Williams, if you listen to literally anyone ever talk about Monty Williams in basketball, it's that he is like the best human being on planet Earth. I have zero doubts that if there's any coach in basketball that can bring someone back into the fold after a situation like this, it probably is Monty Williams. And Monty Williams could have been frustrated with DeAndre at that moment, could have felt X, Y, and Z way. The thing is that just you listen to players talk about the guy, you listen to anyone who's ever been around him in an organization. I'm not real worried about them bringing him back into the fold. I just worry. I guess I worry more about like where this says Phoenix is going to go, in the post Chris Paul era. Are they going to continue to make poor decisions on the margins? Are they going to continue to make strange choices on the margins? But at the end of the day, like this is fine, right? Like this is the end result here is that Phoenix keeps their contention window open for the next 2 years with Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, DeAndre Ayton, Jay Crowder, X, Y, and Z else on the roster.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's kind of the inevitable outcome here, because when you have Chris Paul and only a finite number of years left, you have to go in for it. You're kind of kicking the can down the road a little bit to put some pressure on Sarver to pay up and see what the tax is going to be like and how that factors into Cam Johnson moving forward. So like there's still decisions to be made that aren't like that one's not necessarily on the margins. That's pretty crucial to the construct of the team. But like the way that you can overcome missing on one of those moves is by nailing everything around the margins. And because Phoenix hasn't, that puts a lot more pressure on the Cam Johnson decision to be done the right way.
Yeah, no, I agree. We'll see where this goes, because the thing that's important to remember is that the Suns were the only 60-win team in the NBA last year. And I know that they flamed out spectacularly in a 7-game series to one of the 3 best players on planet Earth in Luka Doncic. And that final game 7 that we saw them in was a nightmare of epic proportions. But like, this is still an absolutely exceptional team.
Yeah.
And this is not a situation like the Utah Jazz where they didn't have any playoff success. They literally just made the finals in 2021.
Yeah.
Like,
and
they're in a good spot.
In Luka, like it was just a Luka buzzsaw. That game 7 was like is unlike anything I've ever. Like I will remember that game for the rest of my life because I got maybe 8 or 10 text messages from buddies of mine who barely watch the NBA. They're just like, "What is going on right now? How is this even?" It was just an insane shooting display. A lack of anything from I've never seen anything like that before.
Okay. So the reason I had you on was to talk about Summer League more than to talk about the Deandre Ayton thing. It just happened while we were talking or while we were about to record. I will ask you a very simple question here to start. Who do you think has been the best player at Summer League? Not the best rookie, not the best all around, everything. The best player at Summer League point blank.
I'm going to go Quentin Grimes for the Knicks. He's been great.
Adam. That would be my answer too. That's it. I think it's been Quentin Grimes. Continue, please.
Yeah. I mean, obviously he's scoring the ball really well. The Knicks as a whole have great defensive intensity that they've shown out in Las Vegas. That's been impressive to me, top to bottom. But Grimes is a focal point of that because of his versatility, guarding different spots on the wing. Really smart help defender. But I'm always curious about what we see in Summer League is a translatability to the NBA game, right? And the most important thing for guys whose role might be a little bit more complementary is knowing how to pick their spots. A lot of times you get to the Summer League and teams will turn over the keys to somebody who might not normally get to drive the car during the regular season. Yeah. I think that New York is kind of doing that, but more importantly, Grimes seems to know when to go and when to move that thing, when to let somebody else get involved, when to be a spot up threat. Like the timing of everything that he's given on the offensive end, combined with what we know he does defensively, he just gets in there, makes an impact, gets out of there. And it's incredibly impressive. Like I think he's just very, very ready for whatever type of role it is that the Knicks are gonna ask of him.
Isn't Quentin Grimes the coolest story to you?
Yeah, from Kansas.
Quentin Grimes was for people who don't know, Quentin Grimes was a top 5, top 6 recruit in the country, committed to Kansas, played well opening night, really struggled the rest of the year at Kansas. Declared for the draft, got told, look, you'll probably be like a 2nd-round pick. You might go undrafted. He decides to transfer to Houston. And this whole time, throughout the entirety of his career up until that point, Quentin Grimes was a lead guard. Like you can say that he was kind of a combo maybe, but especially over the last 2 years of his high school career, he transitioned into being a lead. Mm-hmm. And it feels like a lot of the skills that we see that he developed when he was younger pop up in his game now. But in order to be successful at the college level, he had to adapt, he had to adjust, and he had to learn new skills. He had to overcome real adversity. And he did that at Houston. He transitioned from being like a primary lead guard ball handler to being more of a wing at Houston and being like a 3-and-D guy. He turned himself into the best player in the AAC, the best player on a top 2 seeded Houston team, if I remember correctly, and goes in the first round and has continued to showcase a lot of the skills that he learned at Houston as a 3-and-D guy because he had to overcome that adversity. I think that really helped him in his rookie year, overcoming that rookie wall. There was never a point I felt like last year where I saw Quentin on the court, even as a rookie, where he was totally overwhelmed. Yeah. There were times in his freshman year at Kansas when he was a teenager, 5-star kid, one of the best players in the country, according to recruiting rankings. And according to me, I loved Quentin Grimes coming out of high school. He looked overwhelmed at times at Kansas and looked like he was moving too fast. I think because he overcame that adversity, he really has become someone who is capable of scaling those difficult moments. And now you see it at Summer League, where when he's comfortable, we're seeing more and more of the skill set that he had previously start to leak into his game, while also taking a lot of the lessons that he's learned from the development on his wing skills, his 3-and-D ability, and always having those to fall back on.
It's a great story. And I think it goes to show, like, not everybody's ready at the same time, whether you're a 5-star or 2-star. Like, you've got to walk your own path and go through the journey that you need to prepare yourself for the NBA. Houston ended up being the perfect fit for him. It taught him off-ball skills. I loved his college tape, his final year at Houston. Like, running off of screens, knocking down threes, aggressive defense. He blocked a ton of jump shots, smart rotations from the weak side, like, did all of these things well. That you're saying, this is a great 3-and-D guy. And then, in the back of your head, he used to be able to handle and do a lot of this stuff off the bounce. If he can tap into that a little bit more, he's a really versatile guy moving forward to the NBA. And I think a lesson to take away from that is to value guys who have been able to at least perform in different roles, whether they've been excellent in both, but at least have the ability to do both. Like, I think back to Austin Reeves, another guy who was a little bit of a sleeper in some regard. Like, the role that he played at Wichita State, way different than what he played at Oklahoma. And now he's, playing for the Los Angeles Lakers, back in that more scalable role that he had at Wichita State. But that he can do a little bit off the bounce when he's chased off the 3-point line, because that's the role that he had to play a little bit more at Oklahoma. So there's a little bit of that well-rounded game to it that I think Grimes has really been able to put on display in Summer League right now. It's really comforting to show that he can make an impact in many different ways when he's on the floor.
I totally agree with you. I've been incredibly impressed. And I guess that I would raise this question. If you're Utah, and there's obviously Donovan Mitchell rumors flying around about the Knicks, about Utah, I'm trying very hard to get Quentin Grimes. Like, Quentin Grimes, outside of RJ Barrett, who I still really believe in. I really like RJ.
Me too.
Quentin Grimes for me is the get, like, whatever you want to say it, like, among Obi Toppin, among Emmanuel Quickley, all those other really interesting, albeit but younger guys on this Knicks roster that are good. And I really like Deuce McBride. I've been a fan of Cam Reddish, maybe more than some people are. I'm trying to make Quentin Grimes like the young player I'm prioritizing. I'm trying to get as many draft picks as I can. I'm trying to get Quentin Grimes. I'm trying to make sure it's Evan Fournier as opposed to Julius Randle attached in the deal. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Well, and it helps for Utah to be able to shape their roster in many different ways if they were to go that path, because you can't have too many wings who can shoot it and are smart playmakers and good defenders. Like, there's no such thing as an excess of those guys. I mean, Grimes isn't as big as some. He's only about like 6'5", maybe 6'6". You'd like to have a little bit more size for versatility to play 2 through 4 there, but I think he can guard 1 through 3 and be just fine. And he's a very, very solid, steady, dependable hand. That goes a long way when you're going to be cast in the type of role that he's going to have to play.
Yeah, I think that's dead on. I will be very interested to see. I don't think the Knicks will take like a hard line. Like, we absolutely will not include Quentin Grimes in a Donovan Mitchell deal. I don't think you can do that, especially if you maybe have taken a hard line on not including RJ Barrett. If I was Utah, I would say Quentin Grimes is probably my get out of their young guys, which is maybe not what like the consensus is. Like, I know a lot of people really like Toppin. I know a lot of people really like Quickley. Grimes is my guy, I would say, among that group. Let's go to the rookies, because I think that everyone wants to hear what we think of all of the young guys that played at Summer League, right? Let's start with the number 1 overall pick, Paula Bancaro. Just everything you would anticipate, everything you would expect, right?
Yeah, he was great. I hope that there's a little bit of like swallowing our words somewhat going on about like the defensive concerns in certain areas. Like, I know he still has some questions about exactly what position he guards full time, but he's productive on that end of the floor. When he's dialed in and he wants to play on that end, I think he's pretty solid. Willing passer. Some of the turnover stuff, the quickness of the decisions obviously has to get better. But like we're talking about a guy who lethal scorer in isolations, like just the pace that he plays with, the understanding, the feel is so
Yeah.
advanced for somebody of his age. And yeah, I think Orlando nailed this, not just in the sense that he looks really good, but he's exactly the type of player that you look at the rest of this roster and you say, we have so many ways to play around this and really succeed that the sky's kind of the limit for where we're at. I mean, being Paolo Bancaro and being thrown in there to be kind of the number one option in summer league and to play as well as he did in just those 2 games, to the point where Orlando said, "Screw it, like shut it down. We don't want him getting hurt." That's an incredible compliment to a type of basketball mind that he is, to be able to come in and read defenses the way he has right away.
Yeah. So this is why I said from like day one of like the draft cycle, or even like June 1st, right? When everyone really starts paying attention to the draft cycle. I love all of these prospects at the top 4.
Yeah.
I like them so much. I think they're all really, really high level prospects, because even though I ended up with Chet at number 1, I really don't want to make it a thing where it's like, oh no, like, you have your guy, you've picked another guy. No, I really like all of these guys.
Yeah.
I think Paulo's really great. And I think Paulo is about to be an awesome, awesome NBA player just because of the intersection of his size and his skill. I mean, you saw that on display from the jump. Like the jump from college to summer league in terms of athleticism, strength, size, it's pretty real. It's not quite the jump from college to the NBA, but it's a good middle ground, I think. And I want to see what Paulo looks like against the biggest, longest, most athletic guys, right? In terms of his efficiency, because the one thing we did see that was a little bit concerning from Paulo was turnovers and just some like shitty shots from time to time.
Yeah.
But that's just like such small potatoes at the end of the day, right? Paulo's intelligence level, the thing that I said pre-draft as well, is the passing. I mean, I really think people so drastically underplayed how incredible Paula Bancaro is as a passer. He is such a smart, intuitive, reactive player on that end. The way that he sees the court is absolutely phenomenal. I do have my worries on defense still. He's always been a smart guy who is, around the right places and who knows where to rotate. It's just engagement. Like he needs to be engaged and locked in all the time. You can't take possessions off when you have not great quickness. I don't want to say he's like deficient in terms of lateral quickness, but he doesn't have enough of it to where he can, disengage mentally for 5 possessions in a row and not get eaten alive a little bit out there at the NBA level. At summer league, guys can't really do that. But in the NBA, I think they could, and I think they probably will if he disengages. I don't know. I love Paulo. I think he's so good. He is such a good shot creator. He is. We saw a lot of I loved what Orlando did, playing him at the 5 more often, and using him both as the screener and as the ball handler in ball screens. And particularly, we saw the way that he tries to punish switches.
Yes.
He is going to try to punish you in switches every single time that he can. He has a real understanding. Sometimes it takes young guys a little bit more time to understand, okay, I've got a real advantage here. I've got a real ability that I can take advantage of with my skills, with my power, with my quickness for guards in their case. Paulo innately understands that immediately. He already has it. And I think that he's going to be a very, very good offensive player from the jump. Day one, probably averages something like 17 points and 5 assists as a rookie.
Yep. And he's so smart with not just using his physicality, but knowing ways to leverage that to his advantage, right? So high ball screen comes, he thinks that the team might not try to switch. Like he slips that just a little bit to force a switch to create some contact. He loves ducking in and playing physically for a post up catch kind of at the nail hole or the elbow areas. And he knows how lethal he can be from there because he can see every double team that would come in front of him. Great with spins, very controlled, like just hard to bump off of his spots. Any rookie in the NBA is going to face consistency issues. It's just how the game goes for a lot of these young guys, right? Anthony Edwards had it a couple of years ago. Jalen Green had it a lot last year as a rookie. Like everybody goes through those trials and tribulations. Paolo is going to have a lot of that because he's the focal point of this Orlando attack, and I think will be from day one. But he's so smart that he's going to be able to figure it out and not be overburdened, where he can just make the right decision and trust somebody else. And for every 8 turnover game that he's going to have, there are also going to be nights where he goes out there and he gets you 30 with maybe 6 assists and gets 8 of 9 from the free throw line. That just helps you stay in and win some games that are also really, really crucial. So, at the very early part of his career, take the bad with the good, but realize that you've got just a special, like you said, combination of size and skill and an incredibly, incredibly smart basketball player.
No, I think that's dead on. Let's go to Chet. Yeah. Chet had the phenomenal opening game.
Yep.
Has had phenomenal moments throughout, I would say. Has had some moments where he's gotten pushed around as well. Like the Kenneth Lofton game was real. He's had some moments where he's gotten pushed around in Vegas as well. What has been your overall reaction to Chet?
I mean, it's the highs and the lows of things, right? So with Chet, I've always tried to take a patient stance with his physicality because he is strong, he is competitive. I think that you and I agree that those are two areas that we care more about than necessarily the overall strength, the overall size of his body and his physique. I mean,
for a 20-year-old, for sure.
Yeah, and we're seeing a guy right now who played with some confines in a Mark Few offense and system that I think benefited all of the pieces that Few had to put together. It's a motion type scheme. And Chet is such a unique piece that his offensive game pops so much more, not just outside of those confines, but with NBA floor spacing. And he's starting to figure out a little bit how to get to spots, when to force the issues, when to do a little bit less. But I think the biggest thing for me with Chet long term is going to continue to be, is he the type of guy that is more of a playmaker for others in the half court or more of a scorer? Because that's the one area I see him continuing to try to figure out right now.
I love it. You're just getting calls. You're getting calls in the middle of the show. It's
when
great.
The wife is away and you don't pick up on the first one, you wonder what's going on. So I got to.
So let's talk Chet real quick while Adam figures out what's going on with his wife. So here's the thing. Chet Holmgren has averaged 14 points. He's averaged 8 rebounds, 3 blocks, 2 steals, 3 assists per game while shooting 42% from 3, 48% from the field. If I would have told you those pre-summer league that would be his numbers, we'd all take them, right? Yeah. It's just that, like what Adam said, the extremity of the moments that we see, the extreme polarizing nature of his game and of the things that we see on the court with him, it ends up skewing the conversation in a lot of different directions. Yeah. I think there is, with Chet, always evidence of a lot of the things that people had concerns about. You can leverage him right now. He is so skinny. His lower half is so thin that you can move him around if you need to. Also, he is 7 foot tall. He shoots 42% from 3 so far in summer league and can attack off the break. He can grab and go. He can start your offense. He's a good passer. We've seen, I think the offense has actually been even better than what I expected from the jump in terms of his fluidity off the bounce, in terms of the way that he uses his length to cover ground. It's just the defense is going to take time physically. You see all of the anticipatory tools. You see the way that he uses his length. You see the toughness. It's just going to take time because he's so fucking skinny that he's going to get moved. Like, it's going to happen.
And look, like, not every team has a Kenneth Lofton in their arsenal that's tailor-made to move him in the post, right?
Right.
Like, not a lot of teams can play that way. And I get sick of hearing how is he going to go against, Joel Embiid or Jokic? Like, nobody guards those guys one-on-one in the world. It's not about his skinniness. It's about how good those other guys are. Like, the reason I brought up in the Paolo segment a little bit more about consistency being key, because I think that's part of what Chet has to figure out in an NBA system where he gets a little bit more responsibility. Like we're seeing Oklahoma City inbound the ball to him and let him bring it up across half court. He wasn't asked to do that at Gonzaga. He could rebound and run with it, but not as an outlet guy that you're trusting to kind of get across and initiate. He does less of that in the half court. I think his game is best right now between the 3-point lines, and really able to get out in that open floor and just create and play. I love him out of the pick and pop. I think that's a great area for him right now. And I'm really pleased to see his aggression offensively, like the confidence, the swagger that he plays with. It's very, very real. And he shows that on both ends of the floor with, his rim protection and some of the rotations he makes defensively. But first and foremost, the offense has been what's impressive for me. There are going to be nights when it's not necessarily there. And long term, he's going to have to figure out how to solve being guarded by different types of players, right? Some guys that are small, like Keegan Murray did a pretty good job on him in the summer league contest that those guys played.
Which, by the way, Keegan's another guy that we're going to talk about here momentarily, but a big part of Keegan's game is knowing how to use his leverage, knowing how to use his center of gravity and move guys around. He's a much more skilled, versatile offensive piece than Kenneth Lofton, but they are similar in that specific way in how they use their lower half and use their center of gravity to move guys around.
Yep. Yeah. And again, I think there's going to be a figuring out process for Chet, because at every other level of basketball he's played at, he's just that much taller, longer, more skilled than any guy that can guard him. That's not going to be the case every single night. He has to go through that problem-solving process. So there will be great nights like we saw with the debut. There will be tough nights based on who he has to guard or who guards him. But overall, you bet on the feel, the skill, the shot-making ability. That all seems very, very real, and say this guy's going to live up to the hype. Like, I'll just spoiler alert for the rest of this year. I think all of the top 6 guys have been pretty damn good here through the beginning of Las Vegas.
Yeah, with one exception. Not exception even, just one that I think is raised a couple of questions, but we got a smaller sample on him.
Sure.
Jabari Smith, number 3. Let's just go there. Jabari has been really great defensively.
Yes.
I mean, holy shit, defensively has he been good. The switchability, the weak side rim protection, the rotations, but especially the switchability. Like, Houston's just switching every action, and they're just like, you know what? Guard out on the perimeter. We want to show what you can do. And he is just swallowing up every guard out there at Summer League. Whenever
he wants it. He wants that type of responsibility. Like, how many guys that think that they were going number 1 overall and end up slipping a pick or two? Like, there are a lot of different ways that you can handle that. For him, it's not just going out there and being the offensive focal point. He wants to prove that he can guard. He wants to play on that end of the floor, especially in those games when the shot isn't falling particularly. That's what's impressed me about Jabari. Like, the offensive stuff, some questions, some things to dive into, maybe a little bit more, but the consistency on defense, regardless of what goes on the other end of the floor, like, you rarely see that from a guy that has been as highly touted as he has over the last 10 or 12 months.
Yeah, no, I agree. And on top of it, offensively, I think there's been some consternation because the shot creation just looks like what we thought it would look like, basically. Yes. It's not polished. His handle is still quite loose. I think the passing has been a little bit better from time to time than what we've seen at Auburn particularly. But a big part of Jabari's value proposition is his spacing and ability to consistently knock down shots. And up until that last game that he played, Houston's guards have just been horrible in terms of distribution. Like, there's just not another way to say it. They have not done nearly a good enough job of getting him the ball in the right spots where he can be successful. Is what it is, right? Like, when Josh Christopher's out there chucking 30 shots every 36 minutes, it's a disaster.
Yeah. And like, there are a lot of good, I think the Rockets rookies all look good in some moments and look like they could be a little bit better in a few others. But like, I am at the end of the day, just an overall really, really big fan of how Jabari Smith has defended. And like, I keep coming back to that. The shot is going to fall. He's going to play with guards who put him in good positions. And if you're looking long-term at kind of the pillars of the organization in Houston, Jalen Green and Jabari Smith together is a really, really good combo because they complement each other so well. somebody who wants to guard on one end in the way that Jabari does, and then the floor spacing to be maybe a little bit more of a complementary piece while Jalen plays with the ball in his hands. I'd love to see late clock pick and pops with those guys and ghost actions and all of the different things that X's and O's wise a really smart mind like Silas can do. But again, I'm not discouraged by the stuff with Jabari because, like you said, I think a lot of us saw this in the pre-draft process as some areas that he needed to continue to work on. It's probably not an issue that's going to get solved in 4 or 5 months during a pre-draft process. But it is going to be a longer process where he's probably not a number 1 or number 2 option on an NBA team in his first year or two. He's just a really good floor spacer who defends, and on a night when he goes mercurial from 3, like you're winning that game because of him.
All right, let's talk about Keegan Murray. I talked about him a little bit with Caitlin Cooper on the most recent podcast. I don't know that I need to say a lot, but I want to give you the floor to be able to say whatever you want to say about Keegan.
I'm just more impressed by him every time I see him. Really, really, really happy with the way that Keegan is showing the versatility of his offensive game. I don't want to steal the thunder of Caitlin Cooper, who, she was fantastic on the podcast that you had her on a couple days ago. But like the ability that he has to read and adjust to how the defense is playing him in real time is incredibly just important for a rookie to have. Like, he's very cerebral. He understands his strengths, how to get to his spots, and how to really manufacture that with his physical limitations of not always being the quickest guy on the floor. The shooting versatility is obviously the thing that stands out the most on the offensive end for how he's played this summer, running off of staggers, different types of actions, pick and pops, the confidence that he shoots the ball with. Like, he's going to be a 38 to 40% 3-point shooter on a very, very consistent basis. He's got great touch, and he uses that as a weapon where now he comes in. You can see the pieces that Sacramento's putting together and understand how it all fits. I think he's pretty dang good on the defensive end too, and that's an area that even I underrated perhaps through the pre-draft process. I mean, part of that is just Iowa was kind of a rough place to be a positive defender from time to time.
But let's be real about it. Iowa's defensive scheme is a nightmare. I've said it for 3 or 4 years in a row now. I will say this so you don't have to. I have no idea what the fuck I was doing defensively a lot of the time. They'll like try and run these weird rotations in man coverage. They'll try and run this like 2-3 zone from time to time, which like they force guys into like the wings are raised up and they force their centers into like these crazy long rotations. Like, yeah, it's a disaster. It probably did drastically underrate what Keegan can do defensively because he was a playmaker defensively. The thing for me was always quickness and ability to make consistent on balance closeouts. Here's the thing though, like Iowa forces these terribly hard, long closeouts where like, it's probably a little bit harder for him to do it.
I think there's a long-term kind of philosophical question here to ask of like guys who aren't good at something or don't necessarily show the greatest film in schemes or teams that aren't great at it. Is this more about the situation and the environment that they're playing in, or is it more about the prospect? Because I think there's a lot of circumstances. I can't think of any other off the top of my head right now, but of ways where a guy was a good defender all along, just played in a team where the scheme wasn't great.
Ben Simmons is a good example off the top of our head.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great example for it. So I think that there are definitely lessons that I'm already trying to learn and apply from what we've seen out of Keegan thus far in Summer League. But of all of these guys that are going kind of top 5 or top 6, like he strikes me as the guy who's just not going to have an off night. And that's really important for, I think, what Sacramento wants from their organization right now, but also just for dependability long-term. Like, that's a really good guy that you want to have on your team.
Yeah, I've got a dog on my lap now, so this will be fun. Rest of the podcast will involve dog on lap. Now she's looking up at me. Okay, so next up would be Jaden Ivy. This is probably the one where I've had the most like concern. I thought he was a lot better in the second game before he got hurt.
Yeah.
The first game I thought was like a little bit of him trying to do too much. was a little bit of like loose handle stuff, which concerned me and has always concerned me a little bit with Jaden. Like he has that ability to just run around people, which is always really valuable. But he also doesn't have the tightest handle. And I think from time to time in the summer league environment, particularly where a lot of the time he played with two bigs like Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren on the court together, when the quarters were a little bit tighter, it was a little bit tougher for him to consistently handle the ball.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the forcing is probably something that, like, a lot of times in summer league, I struggle to try to figure out how much of this is the team just saying, "Hey, go out there and prove you can be a guy. Like, let's see what you look like in that role." Like, I think Jaden Hardy in Dallas is a prime example of somebody who through summer league has definitely been forcing. I think that's also like the organizational imperative right now. Like, hey, this team's built around you going out there to see what you can do. So there's probably a little bit of a portion of that there in Detroit. Like they want to play through him and see how Duren and Stewart and Livers and a couple of the other important cogs that are out there really play around Jaden, how he involves them. I was impressed with some of the passing reads that he made. I know that that's just one area as he gets more pick and roll reps. We're going to have to see more. I think there's definitely a feel factor that he needs to be able to play through. And I'm glad that he was able to get a couple of reps here. The injury is incredibly unfortunate. I think this was going to be an impactful and important few weeks for him down in the summer league.
Yeah.
But on the same token here, like, I like the flashes that we saw. It was only 5 quarters. I don't want to overreact to too many of the positives or the negatives from it. Like, I believe in Ivy. I think that he's an incredibly talented player. I'd rather have a guy that can dribble around somebody than somebody who has to figure out how to create separation and feel like we can teach him the rest. So, like, there will be time. There will be areas to try to get him to where he needs to be. But just for his sake, kind of disappointed that things have ended a little prematurely.
Yeah, and this is a good time to just note the injuries that we unfortunately had throughout summer league. I mean, doesn't seem serious, which is good. Shaedon Sharpe, it seems like, has this. Is it what is Shaden's shoulder issue?
Labrum, I think.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was too. A labrum issue, which is a huge bummer. He absolutely needed as much time as he could get in summer league. Dyson Daniels rolls an ankle. EJ Liddell obviously tears his ACL, which is just such a shitty situation. Yeah, pour one out for EJ in his rookie season, which is very unfortunate.
Sohan with San Antonio. Yeah.
Sohan with San Antonio. Is that an injury or is that like a weird other situation? I can't remember. There was something weird.
I would think it was a COVID thing, and then they mentioned that he also had a hamstring injury that he was nursing a little bit as well. So I think there were a couple things going on there.
Yeah, so it's just a huge bummer that we didn't necessarily get to see all of the rookies that we would have liked to have seen. Again, Caitlin and I talked a little bit about Ben Mathurin, but I'll just give you the floor real quick to talk about Ben.
I mean, nothing to add to the conversation that you guys didn't really hit on expertly the last time you were talking. I like the flashes of kind of aggression that he has shown. I think his confidence is super, super high. Love him as a shooter and more of a secondary guy. I think in the moments when, long-term, he doesn't have a great creating guard next to him on the floor, the offense for the team tends to stall out a little bit. He can be still a little bit, I don't want to say black hole-ish, but wants to score first and create second, as opposed to having a great balance to it. There are flashes that are incredibly enticing, but he's long, he's athletic, he plays with energy, and he shoots the ball really well. Like, every single part of that has been on display in some form or fashion in the moments that I've seen from the summer league.
Any other rookies that have really stood out to you that you want to talk about?
The other rookies that have stood out. I mean, I've been really impressed by Jalen Williams for Oklahoma City.
I have too.
This is Santa Clara, Jalen Williams. I hate that I have to continually, clarify which one I'm going with out of the two Oklahoma City Thunder guys, but he's been fantastic. Very, very real as an efficient offensive guy who can do a little bit of anything and everything. I know we talked on the intro part of this with Quentin Grimes about, knowing when to pick your spots. And I think that's one area I've been incredibly impressed by Williams with Oklahoma City. He knows when to swing the ball and move it to somebody else. He plays off of Josh Giddey really well. He plays off of Chet Holmgren really well. He's great in transition, is a lot more bursty of an athlete than even I thought he would be. And I was pretty high on his athleticism. And the
Yeah.
defense is very, very real. Like, he knows how to buy in on that end of the floor. He's toolsy. He's long.
Yeah.
He's physical. I think he checks so many boxes of being just a high impact role player who still has that ceiling to continue to tap into more kind of self creation and really good playmaking on the offensive end.
Okay. The rookie I want to point to that I think has been fun outside of maybe one game. I think that Dalen Terry played pretty poorly, but I've really liked what Dalen Terry has shown from, especially over the course of his last 2 games for Chicago, in terms of athleticism, pushing the tempo, getting his guys just like kind of organized in a real way for a teenager has been very impressive. Like, you saw the reporting from Darnell Mayberry at The Athletic where like they got their ass handed to them in one game. I believe it was against Dallas. Does that sound right to you?
Maybe. Yeah, it was either the
Can't
first or the
remember.
second game. Yeah.
Yeah, it was their second game. It was just like an epic fucking beating. And he was the one on the sidelines, just like, guys, we got to get going. Like, we can't just sit here and get our asses handed to us every single like minute of this game. And that's the kind of stuff that really stands out in terms of a guy that's going to be an energy giver, going to be someone that you really buy into. I've liked his overall decision making for the most part. I think he's been really, really good handling the ball on the wing, making pretty good, effective reads, making good decisions to not take bad shots, especially over the course of the last couple of games. I think he's figured out some things throughout the course of Summer League in an impressive way that I always look for. Beginning of Summer League, what you look like, to the end of Summer League.
Yeah.
What do you look like? And Dalen Terry, I think, has shown a lot of growth from that first and second game to the third and fourth game, where you can see even in that like 4-game stretch, it seems like things have slowed down just like a little bit for him to where he can be more effective making decisions.
Yeah. And I think there was also an adjustment made a little bit on the Bulls' part of moving him to more of a secondary playmaker type of guy as the Summer League went on. Like, I think games 1 and 2, they just wanted to roll the ball out to him and see everything he can do. Like, not necessarily his role, not a standstill creator out of the pick and roll. He needs movement. He needs momentum. He thrives in transition. He loves to get it off of a handoff and get into the paint and use that momentum to his advantage. Chicago's put him in that situation a little bit more. He's looked a hell of a lot better. Like, there were some turnover issues. I think he was adjusting to the space, the physicality in those first 2 initial games. But like you said, you want to see growth. He is starting to figure it out. He's really putting a lot together in terms of, his understanding of what he needs to do to impact the game for his team.
The other guy that I want to point to is Peyton Watson. Peyton Watson had like the one monster game for Denver where I think Kamagate played really well. Christian Brown was like effective within his role, but Peyton Watson, he had like 19 points, 8 rebounds, just looked so comfortable, looked more comfortable in that game than he did at any point at UCLA this past year. Just getting to his spots, getting to the mid-range. That's particularly where he's most effective as a scorer right now. Good passing, plays just hard defensively, man. Like, he brings it every single night here. Not here because they're not in Melbourne, but at Summer League in Las Vegas. I really have liked what I've seen from Peyton Watson. I do think he's probably still a project that doesn't really play much this year, especially given the fact that Denver is going to have Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, Nikola Jokic. Like, that's a team that's going to be trying to compete for a title. Peyton Watson probably doesn't play a lot, but Peyton, what they've seen from him, I think they should be very happy with at this point.
Well, and it's flashes from a guy like him, right? Like, that's all you're looking for, because you don't expect him to come in and just be an incredible guy from day one. You want to see what the high ceiling is, and you also want to see kind of the lowest flourish parts so that you know what to work on, what to prioritize, and have those film points to go back and sit down with him and say, this is what you did this time. This is what you need to learn from it. And there have been a lot of positive flashes from guys, right? Like J.D. Davison erupted a little bit earlier today for the Boston Celtics and had a really, really good showing, 19 points in the first half. Like, he was a guy that a lot of people were down on in this draft process. Bryce McGowan's has had a couple of explosions out there. Like a second-year guy, Santi Aldama, went for 30, a day ago. Like Blake Wesley is having highs and lows and going through this process. And I've really appreciated all of these guys in different flashes, but they're just that. They're flashes. I think it's great to see the high points and what guys bring to the table. But for guys like Peyton Watson or J.D. Davison, those who were written off a little bit, like this is a really strong vindication point for them, that there is an NBA player in there worth investing in and trying to flesh out. And I'm really happy for Peyton Watson that he's been playing so well for Denver.
The other one is Josh Minot
Yeah,
with Minnesota. I have some real concerns on that jumper. I am very skeptical of it at this point still, but he's found ways to make impacts so far beyond the jumper. His cutting, his just overall intelligence of knowing where to go on the basketball court. It's just been very impressive. He's been very, very impressive. That first game obviously got a lot of hype because I think he went for 25 points and it was like probably more than he scored in any two games combined at Memphis this year. But just a smart, athletic player who fits where the NBA is going as long as the jumper comes along. We'll see if the jumper comes along at a continued level, but all of the signs, all of the flashes, I mean, Minnesota has to be ecstatic there.
Yep. Yeah. And then another shout out to Jabari Walker for Portland. I thought.
Oh, yes. You have to shout out Jabari Walker.
Yeah. Yeah. He's been great. Like, I should have mentioned Caleb Houston in the discussion of guys who are vindicating themselves a little bit, having a little bit written off. Like both those guys played themselves into long-term contracts just by being ready to go. Like their motors both have been really high. Houston able to hit shots and play with confidence on that end. And Jabari Walker does all of the little things that you look for in kind of a connector piece in the front court there. So really good to see some of those second round guys emerge. Like I'm not going to make the Herb Jones comparison with Jabari because I think Herb is much more instinctual on the defensive end in ways that you can't really teach. But like what he is doing now in the summer league fits incredibly well in a role next to Damian Lillard and Jeremy Grant and whatever it is that you need on that team, where as a rookie, if you need to come in and play 8 to 12 minutes off the bench, no problem. And then work to expand that role as the season goes on and you get more comfortable with where you fit in the offense. But those are two guys in the second round that I've just really, I've been pleased with.
Well, in Portland's case, you can compare and contrast what Jabari Walker does with what Greg Brown does, right? Like Jabari, these two guys were both athletic second round picks, projects to some extent, although Jabari is showing that he's not really much of a project. Jabari just knows where to be, and Greg still doesn't really have that idea at this point. Greg is still just trying to like make things happen with his athleticism, whereas Jabari Walker is using his athleticism in intelligent ways, putting pressure on defenders in back cuts and in 45 cuts, spacing the floor at a reasonable level. He knows how to play at a really effective role that's going to help. It's going to help Portland, I think, at some point this year. Yeah. I bet you he has like a 10-game stretch where he plays 20 minutes a night and is like relatively effective.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think like Keon Ellis for Sacramento has been quietly really good, knocking down shots, playing really good defense. Like there are these guys around the margins who always pop up and present themselves. And for me, I look for two things. One, the scalability in their role on an NBA floor. Is this something we're seeing now that they can and will be asked to do on an NBA floor in the regular season? And the second thing from it is really the consistency with how it matches up to what we saw pre-draft, right? Like if a guy shot 20% from three and then all of a sudden he's, 8 of 16 in the summer league, how much do you really buy that sample to depend on him once training camp opens in September and October? I think that the consistency of that end, as well as knowing exactly how it fits, are two areas I'm always looking for. Like Caleb Houston definitely has that. Jabari Walker definitely has that. And I think to some extent, Keon Ellis for Sacramento has been really good at showing, hey, this is how I'm going to earn my minutes, and I can consistently do this on a night-to-night basis.
Okay. I don't think I want to keep you much longer than an hour. We've gone and had some fun here. Maybe I'll do a bit more of a breakdown on some of the older guys at Summer League on a different show next week when Summer League ends officially and mercifully for some people that have been in Las Vegas for a week plus at this point. I have done, what's the longest you've ever stayed in Las Vegas?
24 hours. I've been to Las Vegas once. I've never made it out to a summer league because I'm always recruiting or coaching and doing something with my own teams here. So the schedule is always pretty tough for me to get out there. I've only been once. It was 24 hours, hopped in, hopped out, had a great time, sweat through every pair of clothes that I had with me for the trip, and just said, you know what? I don't know if I need to be out here again unless there's basketball and a good business purpose to be in here.
Yeah. So I did the summer league. I did back half of summer league into recruiting weekend in Vegas. That used to occur. I don't think it really occurs anymore, unfortunately. It used to be like the last weekend of July or maybe midweek. It'd go Peach Jam and then Vegas, basically.
And that's when I was there, was for kind of one night through the tail end of that.
Yeah. I did 10 straight days. It was so seriously, any young basketball writer that is thinking, oh yeah, like I'm just going to go, I'm going to meet so many people. It's going to be such a great time. I'm going to go for like 10 days. It's going to be great. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Trust me on this. For the love of God, save yourself. Do not do 10 days in Las Vegas. Do not do more than I get sick of it after 5. I really get sick of it after 3, but I get to the point where I can't really manage it anymore after 5.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good advice for me in the future in case I do end up getting out there for something. Like, I'm going to book 48 to 72 hours, enjoy my time, meet as many people as I can, and then get home and recharge my batteries and some air conditioning. That's what you do.
That's what you got to do. Okay. Adam, have you watched any good movies since you've gotten married recently? Congratulations, first and foremost.
Thank you.
But, you've gone on, I believe, a little mini honeymoon, right?
Yep. Yeah. Got married, did a honeymoon, moved into a new house, which you can see the beautiful background here. We have everything set up in the recording studio so far.
The hashtag spin studio.
We, not as much of a movie guy as I am a TV show guy. And I know we talked about it a little bit. I just finished watching Succession about 2 or 3 days ago, and really, really good show. So that's one, and I can't contribute too much on the movie conversation. I'm not quite Matt Penny there, but really enjoyed diving into Succession a little bit more. Like, really well written show. I think each character just comes to life and pops, and you get invested in seeing the growth of each character, even though you recognize they're all horrible freaking human people. Like, you want to root against them, but you want to root for them all. It's a fascinating dynamic as you watch, but really, really well done show. And kind of, leaving us on a cliffhanger here, waiting for the next season. Have you gotten through the last season?
Oh, totally. Yeah. My wife and I watch it like when it comes out. Yeah, it's the best. I'm trying to think movie wise. My wife and I have gone down a rabbit hole of like horror movies as usual.
Yeah.
We watched a movie called The Queen of Black Magic, which is an Indonesian horror movie by one of the Mo brothers. I believe it's Kimo Stambul, and just an incredibly fucked up fun ride, like a haunted house horror fucked up movie. Incredibly fun. We also saw Thor, which is incredibly the hatred that movie has gotten. I don't understand. Like, I get that people want the Marvel thing to move forward. Sometimes you can just sit back and enjoy like a fun movie where like there is a bit in that movie that made me laugh no fewer than 20 times. I'm not joking. I laughed at the same bit 20 times, and I hate myself for it, and I don't care. It is incredible. The movie is fun. It looks great. The colorization's incredible. I think the way it's shot is incredible. Yeah, all around. Go see Thor: Love and Thunder. It's a fun movie. Like, just go have fun, people.
I got a text yesterday saying that I haven't seen it yet, but I need to go watch the new Top Gun movie, and I need to see it in theaters. That it's a great watching experience there. That's first on the list for me. I know I need to get to that. And like, I agree with you. Movies are about kind of having fun sometimes, and not just going for cinematic breakdown and the detailing of the analysis of how everything is put together. Like, go and have an enjoyable movie watching experience. I still enjoy going and seeing all the James Bond films when they come out. Like, that's been one that my dad and I used to do when I was younger. So there's always nostalgia going into the theater and watching one of those. But I mean, I got to get to Top Gun. I've heard a lot of good things about that.
Yeah, like, look, I just watched like Mikey and Nikki, which is like this old mid-70s movie by Elaine May about like these two gangsters, like, and it's like a character study of gangsters and just their relationship. And I can break down Mikey and Nikki and talk about how it's like this beautiful portrayal of friendship and those like toxic people in your life and all of that stuff. Or I can watch Top Gun and have a blast when the planes go zoom. Like, I'm good with doing both, but sometimes we have to take products for what they are. And Thor Love and Thunder is super fun and funny and enjoyable. And Top Gun is planes go fast, zoom, zoom. Yeah. And I don't care about anything else that happens in the movie. It's just super fun.
And I have increasingly turned into a guy who likes TV shows and movies to be like the time I switch my brain to 50% power for a little bit of time. Like, I'm doing enough throughout the day. I don't need to be sitting here psychoanalyzing every character decision for an hour and a half when I'm watching film, for 5-6 hours a day before that. So, I'm enjoying the TV shows we're diving into. If there are any recommendations from you, from anybody else who listens to Game Theory, like, please hit me up for some other TV shows to watch, because this summer, I'm looking for some things to binge.
Have you done Severance yet?
No.
Yeah, my wife and I are midway through Severance right now.
Okay.
It's just one season so far. It's very interesting. Yeah. Okay. I would say Severance would be one.
That's Apple, right?
Apple. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. There it is. Okay. Spins, tell the people where they can find you on the internet. Tell the people where they can find your work.
Well, Sam, first off, thank you for having me on here. Always a blast to be talking hoops and making it through all the emergency calls, all the dogs on the lap. Like, we got to the finish line here today.
You did.
We did.
I'm pretty sure my dog like ran out of the room at one point to go pee somewhere in my house. So I'm gonna like go out here soon and find where my dog peed. So it's gonna be great.
Yeah. But anyway, find me on the Boxin1_ on Twitter. And then Adam Spinella is named the YouTube channel. And then our Substack, theboxin1.substack.com, has a lot of written form content coming out right now, trying to do some different projects over the summer, some look aheads to some high school film on guys that are going to be in potentially the 2023 draft class, as well as something I really enjoy doing, retro scouting reports, where we go back and look at some prospects over the last 5 to 10 years who, just do another video breakdown of them and see what their college film was like, how we would have graded them if they were around now, and try to analyze what's changed in their game. I really enjoy doing that series. So if anyone in there is as much of a draft loser as me, then go ahead and dive into some of that stuff. But summer's a fun time because you can kind of do what you want and set the agenda for, where things are going to be once basketball season ramps up. So trying to get a good balance between work and life right now. But again, thank you for having me on here, Sam. We'll do this anytime you ask me to.
Well, you just did the Rocco Zikarsky video, and I still haven't watched enough of Rocco yet. I've gotten told by a good friend of the program over here, Chris Anstey, former, first overall pick with the Mavericks. Yeah. He has told me to watch Rocco like 5 or 6 times, and I still haven't done it. And now that he's played in the U17s, I have no excuse. I used to not be able to find tape on him, but now there's like a lot of tape on Rocco that I need to get through. So I would encourage everyone to go watch Adam's tape on Rocco Zikarsky, which I still haven't watched yet, even because I want to make my own assessment here before watching anything that Adam has published yet. Podcast, go to the YouTube channel, watch the breakdown that I did with Amin and Asor Thompson. Listen to the bit of audio I did with Caitlin Cooper that, quickly became the hottest audio on the internet when the Pacers decided to sign Deandre Ayton to an offer sheet, and then quickly flamed out a little bit when the Suns decided to match. So keep it locked here, and we will have some great content moving forward. But until next time, we'll talk soon.